Ryanair press conference. The nation is facing a number of controversies or major political challenges today, led notably this morning by whether we should all be touching Molly Malone's boobs and whether there is whether the two green ministers for transport and tourism are up to the job. In our view, they're not, as the cap on Dublin Airport is now costing Ireland growth, economic growth, traffic growth and jobs growth, in direct conflict with Eamon Ryan's own aviation policy for Ireland, which he has lamentably failed to implement, despite 4 years in office as Transport Minister. And you would think his colleague, who has spent 4 years as our Tourism Minister, might intervene, but as we've seen this week in the events in RTE, her interventions are not particularly useful or indeed successful. So I'll give you a quick run through the Ryanair presentation. You know, we're wonderful, we're Europe's lowest cost airline. We're growing like gangbusters this year. Somewhere between 40 and 50 aircraft are being allocated to airports all over Europe. One is going to Ireland, thankfully, but it's going to Cork, sadly, and none is going to Dublin because Dublin is capped at 32 million passengers per annum. That's an artificial cap that was imposed back in 2005 as part of granting planning for the second terminal. It was designed to regulate surface traffic at Dublin Airport. It has nothing to do with capacity in the terminals or on the runways, and yet 15 years later we're still now stuck, and our national aviation policy is being damaged. Our tourism industry is being damaged by this entirely bogus and artificial planning restriction, which a useful tourism minister or a useful transport minister would intervene in. Either A, write to Dublin Airport and instruct them to ignore the cap, which would be a breach of the planning regulations, but Dublin Airport is a piece of national infrastructure. It is the gateway on and off this island on the periphery of Europe, and we cannot wait 4 years or probably longer of planning delays to have this cap lifted, particularly when, as a country, we've just opened a second runway at Dublin Airport at a cost of 300 million euros, and now we can't use it. We have less capacity at Dublin Airport with 2 runways than we had when there was 1 runway. We'd like to grow in Ireland, but sadly, we'd like to grow in Dublin, but sadly all that growth is being lost to other European airports because there is nowhere to put those aircraft while this planning restriction remains in place. So we're number 1 airline in Europe for traffic growth. This year we'll grow from 184 to 200 million passengers. We're number 1 for on-time performance and reliability. We're also the number 1 European airline for an A climate rating. We have 400 aircraft on order if and when Boeing get round to actually delivering them to us, and we are embarking on a decade of growth here at Dublin Airport. In Europe this summer we'll operate from 95 bases, a number of which are in Ireland, 250 airports. We're flying to 40 different countries. We have a fleet of 600 aircraft, 400 more aircraft on order, and we expect to grow to 200 million passengers this year, but sadly none of that growth can be placed in Dublin, much as we would like to, and in the next decade we'll grow by 50% to 300 million passengers per annum. And the question is, how much of that growth is going to come to Ireland, where our national aviation policy is to deliver growth, deliver connectivity, and for aviation to contribute to Ireland's economic growth and development. We have the lowest fares in Europe, and we also have the lowest costs, which is why our fleet is growing very rapidly. Current developments: very strong post-COVID recovery. No other airline in Europe has grown or recovered the way Ryanair has. We carried 148 million passengers in 2019. This year, that will grow to 200 million passengers. There are challenges. Boeing continues to mess us around with aircraft delays. Fuel is higher than it was pre-COVID, and we're dealing with conflicts and war in Ukraine and in the Middle East. Nevertheless, thanks to the aircraft deliveries we are taking from Boeing, we're making very strong market share gains right across the European Union. We're growing strongly in Italy, in Portugal, in Spain, in Poland, and in many other markets. We're seeing very strong growth this summer in new markets. We've opened a new base in Copenhagen, 4 aircraft. We are opening 11 domestic routes in Morocco, where we have 8 aircraft based. We're growing strongly in Jordan and also in Albania. We're growing everywhere except here in our home market in Dublin. We have 400 environmentally efficient aircraft on order. These aircraft burn 20% less fuel, 20% less CO2 emissions, and reduce noise by 50%. Something that the NIMBYs at Dublin Airport, or the couple of NIMBYs at Dublin Airport, keep raising bogus noise objections to the continuing growth at Dublin Airport. The Dublin Airport cap is now losing traffic and jobs to other EU airports, and we ask our two Green Ministers for Transport and Tourism, what are you doing about Dublin Airport and its growth? It's a national gateway, and sadly we conclude that neither of them are up to the job. In Ireland in 2024 we will have based 40 aircraft. That's an investment of $4 billion in Irish aviation and tourism. We operate from 5 airports, 3 of which are bases. Dublin Airport is the only one that cannot grow. It's capped at 32 million passengers last year. They carried just over 32 million passengers. We're operating 210 routes, 10 of which are new, although they're all from the regions, Knock, Kerry and Cork. We are 20 million passengers and we're supporting over 20,000 jobs. Dublin, currently under traffic is capped at 32 million passengers, which was the 2023 figure. The DA are raising this cap, exploiting this cap to raise fees by 45% over the next 3 years. They would, wouldn't they? Meanwhile, our Green Transport Minister and Tourism Minister failed to take any action. Ryanair has recently announced that 3 aircraft, 16 new routes and 200 jobs have been switched to southern Italy, airports in Reggio, Calabria and in Sardinia, because we can't place them in Dublin. We would, if we had our way, place another 4 aircraft here in Dublin in the summer of 2024. We would have opened about 12 new routes from Dublin. We would increase frequencies on other routes, and we would have grown traffic in Dublin by about another 2 million passengers from last year's number. Dublin Airport is our national gateway. It is not a local Fingal planning issue. And this idea that it can be left to a couple of county councillors in Fingal or a few NIMBYs complaining about noise when noise is reducing by 50% is simply not acceptable. We're an island on the periphery of Europe. We have an aviation policy that has been tremendously successful over the last 20 years to grow, and yet under the 2 Green Ministers now responsible for transport and tourism, 4 years later we have no growth. In fact, we're stagnating because there's a cap. And it's time for the Transport Minister to actually do something useful for a change and intervene. Government action, and if we can't intervene by ministerial order, then the government should pass legislation temporarily scrapping the cap while the planning, it goes through planning. Greens have failed to deliver failure in Dublin Airport. We're growing by 40 aircraft in, well, we said 50, we suspect somewhere between 50 to 40 aircraft in 2024. That's 1,500 new jobs, none of them are in Dublin. We're growing traffic this year by 16 million passengers, 0 in Dublin, due to the cap. Our fastest growing markets are in Italy, Spain, Poland, all of which where we have lower costs, but more importantly, governments who are actively supporting aviation, traffic and tourism growth. You're very welcome.
Thank you.
I think news talkers are overrepresented here this morning. There are only 3 airports in Europe where, with 0 growth this summer. They're in Serbia, Slovakia and Dublin. And that is what you get with green aviation policies. 0 growth, stagnation and inaction. Dublin Airport cap is now losing traffic, jobs and tourism growth to Italy and other markets. And if our Green Transport and Tourism Ministers are not willing to take action to promote their own national aviation policy, which is to grow, then they should go. It's simple, grow or go. Here's what we're doing. We call them on scrap the 32 million passenger cap at Dublin Airport. They should also, by the way, scrap the 200 million tunnel under a taxiway, another mad cap planned by Dublin Airport just to waste money on capex so they can use it to inflate charges. Instead of spending 200 million on a tunnel that no airport and no airline supports, they should spend those funds on expanding passenger gates at Dublin Airport, particularly in the Ryanair Terminal 1, and expanding car parking, where last summer they claimed to be full, or their car parks were full. And there is very significant growth available here over the next 7 years. We have a plan to grow traffic in Ireland by 50%, growing from 20 million to 30 million passengers. A lot of that growth would be based on increasing the number of aircraft. So we would base another 7 aircraft in Dublin, taking us from 15 million to 20 million passengers. Another 4 aircraft in Cork from 2 to 4.5 million. Shannon would get another 3 aircraft, taking us from 1.3 to 3 million. And Knock, which would now be a base, it's not a base at the moment, would grow from 700,000 passengers to 1.5 million. Kerry would also grow from 400,000 to 1 million passengers. All of this growth is available. It fully complies with Eamon Ryan's own aviation policy, which is to grow traffic, tourism and economic activity here in Ireland, and yet nothing. We have a green transport minister and a green tourism minister, and after 4 years of green policies, all we have is a traffic cap, stagnation, and this claim that, oh, I can't intervene in the planning process. He has no difficulty intervening in the planning process when it comes to Dublin Airport Metro, which is currently going through planning. He's on every radio station opining that, oh, he's confident that the Metro will be approved later on this year. Well, if he's willing to intervene or to comment on the Dublin Airport Metro, why isn't he willing to intervene on a much more serious issue, which is the traffic cap at Dublin Airport? And while he's faffing around doing nothing, Dublin is losing aircraft to almost every other country in Europe. In every other European country, we have a transport or an aviation environment which is incentivising growth, encouraging growth, lowering charges, lowering taxes to win these traffic and growth. And it's indicative. We're taking, if we got 50 aircraft from Boeing this year, we probably won't get 50, it's probably going to be somewhere between 40 and 45. These aircraft are already on sale. There's 4 going to Copenhagen, 4 Alicante, 3 Malaga, 2 Tangier, 2 Dubrovnik in Croatia, 2 in Brussels, Charleroi, 2 in Rome, Fiumicino, Krakow, Budapest. Almost every European country is represented there. Ireland squeaks in because Cork gets 1 aircraft. But other than that, no growth here in Dublin. And Dublin is losing out to all of these other EU countries and airports who are frankly laughing. Every other airport in Europe is laughing at Dublin Airport and its traffic cap. Meanwhile, our transport minister is failing to implement his own national aviation policy. We've set it out here. National aviation policy to enhance Ireland's connectivity, enhance our connectivity, to foster growth of aviation enterprise in Ireland, to support the creation and position of jobs, and to maximise the contribution of the aviation sector in Ireland's economic growth and development. I mean, if it was an exam question, it'd be a D or an E, he'd fail. So, is he enhancing Ireland's connectivity? No, fail. Fostering growth of aviation enterprise? No, fail. Supporting job creation in Ireland? He's exporting Irish jobs to almost every other European country with this bogus traffic cap at Dublin Airport. And is he maximising aviation's contribution to Ireland's economic growth? No, another abysmal failure. And you could understand if you had just one Green minister who was incompetent in charge of transport, but you have a second Green minister who's in, when she's not faffing around in RTE, is in charge of tourism. What's she done for tourism? Not a lot is the question. Irish tourism needs action. Dublin Airport is a national gateway to Ireland. It is not a Fingal planning issue. It cannot be left to a couple of county councillors who can be bullied in Fingal with a couple of noisy neighbours. Dublin Airport, and it is, the noise issue at Dublin Airport is bogus. The noise envelope at Dublin Airport has declined by almost 60% over the last 20 years. Aircraft are getting quieter, newer, much more efficient. Dublin Airport last year, or in 2023, received over 3,000 noise complaints. 3,400 noise complaints. 3,300 of those noise complaints came from one person. One person who masquerades as a self-appointed representative of a non-existent council somewhere in Ballybottle, which doesn't actually exist. So there is no significant noise issue at Dublin Airport, and in fact opening 2 runways divides by 50% the amount of flights over anybody's property. We used to be all flying on one airport, on one runway. If you divide it over 2 runways, you automatically reduce that. And yet, we cannot grow, Aer Lingus can't grow, the American airlines can't grow, because Dublin Airport now tells us it's full, having just opened a second runway at a cost of 300 million euros to the Irish taxpayer, which takes capacity, runway capacity of the airport up to 60 million passengers. It's a bit like opening the Children's Hospital and then saying, sorry, can't use it, because some planning in South County Dublin means it can't be used, or there's some traffic restriction in South County Dublin. This is entirely bogus, and if we had a useful or a committed Minister for Transport, he would be taking action either on an interim basis to lift the cap or pass legislation taking it out of the hands of the on-board Planola. Government should lead, not follow Fingal County Council and local loonies. 1, scrap the airport cap by ministerial order legislation. 2, lower Dublin charges. The 46% increase is entirely unjustified. It's now the highest airport fee increase in the EU. expand the existing terminals and gateways and save the 200 million on your useless on the irrelevant tunnel. Use that money to expand terminals, gates and car parking. Incentivise environmental aircraft. We're investing billions in new aircraft that carry 20% more passengers but burn 20% less fuel. Yet all of Ireland's ETS revenues, which are the environmental taxes paid by Ryanair passengers, is being used to subsidise the school bus fleet, not investments in new aircraft. The Boeing 737 cut emissions by 16% and reduced noise by 40%. We're investing all this money. We get no support from the Irish government or from the Green Transport Minister. And our call today on Eamon Ryan and Catherine Martin is simple. You're transport and you're the tourism ministers. You should grow or go. It's up to you. In summary, therefore, Ryanair is Ireland's #1 airline. We carried 20 million passengers in 2024. It was the same number, sadly, in 2023. We would like to grow to 30 million passengers over the next 7 years. Ireland gets this growth for free because it's our home marketplace. But frankly, if we can't grow or if costs are rising, then the growth will go to all of these other European countries who are only delighted to learn that Dublin Airport is capped and we're exporting all this growth in traffic, tourism and jobs to their markets. We have a 7-year plan to grow, as I said, to 30 million passengers. We need to scrap the Dublin Airport cap ASAP and deliver growth. And if the Greens can't do that, then the Greens should go. Lower Dublin charges, add more gates, more tunnels. And already in the last month, Dublin has lost 3 aircraft of 16 routes and 200 jobs to Italy. Irish tourism needs urgent government action. And we now call again, repeating myself, Green ministers, if they're not up to the job, they should grow.